Hi there, my name is Liz Hathway and this is my mundane look at 2020. 2020, it has a ring to it, doesn't it? It's like 1920, only better. 2020, it feels kind of quite balanced in a way, and it's always an interesting decade, those 20s. If you think of the 1920s, it was exuberant, it was bubbling, it was expansive, excessive, it was exciting, and it's very much like a young person in their 20s, isn't it? And that's what we're coming into. So a lot of decisions were made actually towards the end of 2019. We finally know where in the UK we're going with regard to Brexit. It's now clear. So there's a lot of things being sorted in a way, and now we can move into the 2020s and we have to make something of them. But I think it's a kind of excited, excessive, just like we were in our 20s sort of feel about the 2020s. The big event, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through the year month by month, but I first wanted to just quickly say one of the important things that is happening this year is we're having that switch of the North Node. The North Node will be moving into Gemini this year. It's always interesting because that means that the eclipses will be moving from the Capricorn Cancer axis into the Gemini Sag axis. It's an important shift. If we think of Cancer, the North Node in Cancer, it's very much been about tribe. It's been about the politics of emotions. People have been voting a lot to do with their gut feeling and less with their head. If we look at the UK, we saw in the recent election a lot of people shifting tribe, voting for a different party for the first time in their lives. So there's been this sort of searching for identity and searching for family, searching for tribe and searching for belonging. Cancer as well is also about preserving and saving. It's like what you've got on the bank. A lot of people probably manage to put a few pennies away in this period with the North Node in Cancer. It's about security. Not knowing what's ahead makes us focus on security. Now the node is moving into Gemini. Gemini is much more about trade. It's much more about trade relations. It's much more about forging new allegiances. And with the South Node in Sag, you know, the kind of diplomacy that is necessary to create those new opportunities. It's also, I think, with Neptune there in Pisces squaring at some point the nodal axis, and it'll be featuring in the eclipses. There's a lot of mist and fog around as well, certainly when it comes to messages and the sincerity of messages. We have a lot of Gemini politicians around at the moment, and Gemini is extremely slippery. It can mould a truth, it can shift perspective. It's got that double quality to it, so things can be always interpreted in many ways. So it's a kind of a searching sort of nodal position, if you like. But very important when the node shifts sign, as I said, because of the shift in the year's eclipses. I'm going to start at the beginning here. We've got Saturn conjunct Pluto, of course, on the 12th of January. A lot of people have said a lot about this. I just want to say it's about focus. Remember when Pluto was discovered, Freud wrote that same year, Civilization and its Discontents. He was talking about the id. He was talking about that deep layer, you know, which is for most of us in ourselves, that deep unconscious part of ourselves is triggered by all kinds of things that we're not aware of. And now Saturn and Pluto, it's kind of tapping into that deep discontent that's inside us, and we can put it outside and we can look for it in the outside world, or we can focus, we can find that alchemical process within ourselves. Saturn is very much the crucible. Pluto is very much about after death, what comes next? What's the next phase in our development? What do we need to sort through? What's in the cellar that needs to go out? You know, it's a very deep process. Also, there's a solitariness to it. It's a separateness to it. There's a focus to it. It's a winter sign. Things freeze over, but when things are frozen, we can look at them. They're still for that moment in time. It's a very, very intense and powerful conjunction. And certainly in terms of the year, we're going to see that degree of the conjunction coming back with the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. There's 3 of them this year. We're going to have Mars in Aries, Mars in Capricorn. So there's a lot of other planets tapping in. So that conjunction is setting, if you like, balls in motion. They're both planets that are related to karma. They're both planets as well that start off cycles that last a very, very, very long time. So the kinds of things that are happening now, fortunately, I think it is in Capricorn. Saturn is ruling the conjunctions at the moment, and Saturn, even when he moves into Aquarius, which he does this year, he dips his toes in Aquarius, there's still a lot of essential dignity in that Saturn. So he's ruling the roost, but he's ruling it with sobriety, he's ruling it with an iron fist in some ways. Certainly when it's in Capricorn, there's a sort of strict quality to it. But I think when Mars, it's a sign of course when Mars is exalted, there are a few problem times in the year when Mars is in Capricorn could be dodgy. But certainly when we see Mars coming into Aries, which is going to be around the first eclipse, 21st of June, we have a solar eclipse almost exactly on the summer solstice there. And then we have Mars moving into Aries. Mars, fighting arm of the sun, the military side of the sun. So that is certainly a period there while Mars is in Aries, and he's in there quite a while this year as well. So that's one of the periods in the year where we could see tension. And the kind of tension, it's the countries, like Saudi Arabia, like Russia, like China, countries that have ascendant or planets in the 23 area of the cardinal signs. Those are the countries that are, sort of, putting some weight around, throwing their weight around a bit this year. Certainly, as I said, with the underlying nodal thing going on about trade, you could expect some shifts going between the US and China, UK and the EU. So, there's a lot of fight in the year. A lot of could be positive, but it also could be very militaristic as well. So the year anyway, that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, very alchemistic, very much, if on a personal level, it's about a victory, if you like, a victory over the unconscious parts of ourselves that are now screaming to be heard. And we can either let them through in a destructive way, or we can freeze them up, examine them and deal with them. It's really important. So we have, let me see, in February, the big event there is Mars moving into Capricorn. Mars likes it in Capricorn as well. There's a big sort of reception there between Mars and Saturn. So again, this too, talks can get very, it can be very cutthroat. It can be very aggressive. There's a feeling of, like I said, that fighting arm of the sun. On a personal level, of course, it's tying into Saturn Pluto. Mars is really the spiritual warrior as well. We can deal with the shit, if you like, in ourselves, get on with it. Great. It's trining Uranus as well, that Mars on the 21st of February. So there's plenty of scope there for new energy coming in, new behavioural patterns, new ways of expressing who we are. We get into March, and on the 22nd of March, we see Saturn for the first time dipping its toes into Aquarius. It's a big shift there because later in the year, on the 21st, I think, of December, we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions permanently and definitely moving from Earth after a plus-min 240-year series of conjunctions in Earth. They move the conjunctions to air. We literally start to feel a little bit of an opening up here in the chest, in the lung area. There's more air around, there's more breath. There's much more dialogue with Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius are very much about rules, about regulations, about laws that are good for humanity. It has that humanitarian side to it, Aquarius. So there's an opening up here. There's a bit more air around as Saturn moves into Aquarius. What did I say? When did I say that was? Saturn going into Aquarius? On the 22nd of March. Just prior to that, we have Mars conjunct Jupiter. So you can see now that Mars is sort of like taking over a bit from Saturn. It's setting the pace a bit. It's almost got energy behind it. So that's an interesting move there with around the spring equinox, when Saturn, just after that, we have the conjunction first, Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn moving into humanitarian. The waterman, the Aquarian, is one of the few human figures we have in the zodiac. So it's very much about human dialogue, human intercourse, how we get on with each other. Coming into April, Jupiter conjunct Pluto. Jupiter in Capricorn is very much about get off the mountaintop, get with your feet on the ground, do the grind, make the dream real, earth your aspirations, and kind of just establish it, put roots into the ground. Mars is square Uranus as well in April, so there's some tension. Sun is square Saturn towards the end of April as well. So we have a lot of, if you like, a lot of things to up with our back against a lot of things. There's a lot of tension, but at the same time there is also that quality of, certainly around the 14th of April when Sun squares Pluto and then Sun squares Saturn, there's that element of breakthrough as well. Like the squares are really good. When your back is up against the wall, sometimes you just have to get a hammer and you have to blast your way through it. So if things are getting tough, I think April is a breakthrough month, definitely. May, we see, we have Mercury, of course, in Gemini there, which is always really good. Mars moves out of Aries, so the pressure's off a little bit. That's on the 13th of May. Mars moves into Pisces. Bit of a squishy place for Mars, a little bit bogged down, a little bit of, things kind of run into sticky problems. Certainly Mercury in Gemini there as well, picking up on that nodal sort of, so I think it's a bit of a bogged down month really, in a way, actually. Then we come into June. We have, of course, that solar eclipse on the 21st of June, followed then by Mars blasting out of Pisces, getting his feet out of the bog and close to the fire. There's this, again, Mars in Aries, and followed again by Jupiter conjunct Pluto. So people, get your act together. This is a forge ahead sort of year. Yes, there's going to be obstacles. Also in the collective, there's a lot of big issues. Don't forget, we've got a presidential election in the States in 2020. So you can actually see this sort of, with Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, Pluto, it's going to be a bit of a slugfest, It's going to be a real sort of get the boxing gloves off, and it's going to be fisticuffs. It's going to be a real hard fight, and that is certainly so when Mars gets into Aries, and then we get July. Saturn is back in Capricorn, so the agenda is suddenly like all that sort of talk and all that sort of dialogue of Aquarius seems to sort of fade off, and we come into the fighting season, if you like, in the build up now towards the election in the States in November. We've also, when Saturn goes into Capricorn on the 2nd of July, it's followed immediately by the 5th by a lunar eclipse. Then we have the Sun opposite Jupiter, Sun opposite Pluto, Sun opposite Saturn. That's mid-July. So there again, there's a crisis there. There's a face-off there. The oppositions are always aspects of distance, aspects of, I see you, but I don't get what you're saying. I don't want to talk to you. I want to, probably, you get that feeling, certainly with Pluto, I'm going to undermine your arguments. I'm going to undercut you. I'm going to, dirty dealing. Certainly with Pluto, he's a shadowy figure. So there's some sort of scandals. There's sort of a feeling of exposure, certainly with the sun coming into Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, certainly of powerful figures. Don't forget, we just had a lunar eclipse, so there is some sort of shock rock element there, I think, in July. In August we have let me see, Sun in Virgo, of course, lots of nice trines there to Uranus going on. It's not the most dramatic month, although at the end of the month we have a Mercury-Neptune opposition, which, is again, fake news, stuff going on that is making it very difficult for people to see the truth. And it's also Neptune is also about socialism. It's about the crowd. It's about, the hungry crowd, the activated crowd. We've got the nodes in Gemini, Sag. So, this is tying into that as well. This is kind of a lot of disruption, I think, in the collective at the end of August, certainly, with Venus, Pluto, Mercury, Neptune going on there. In September, then we see Mars going retrograde in Aries. So Mars is doing one of these, what we call a long stay in Aries. And that's interesting because it's long stay, it's meaning it's going to be touching again on all of those, you know, planets, the pinball machine of what's in Capricorn, you know, that bunch of planets there. So Mars is not moving forward, he's staying in fighting sign Capricorn, in it to win it, you know. There's a kind of aggressive, really aggressive edge there. Mars backtracking in Aries, staying there. Saturn going direct as well. So certainly September, you know, the temperature in the collective is set to raise and raise and raise. The stakes are high. You know, Capricorn is a planet too that's very much connected to power in this world. Yeah, it's about worldly success. It's about worldly power. So the stakes are very, very high there, I think, with that Mars square Saturn. That station actually of Saturn on the 29th of September is one to watch because it's square Mars in Aries. So yeah, this is quite military as well. It has quite a sort of war-y type feel to it. It could be, and Mercury's in Scorpio as well, so war of words maybe, but fisticuffs. You know, good energy to have another sort of heavyweight boxing championship or something. Coming into October, we've got Mars, as I say, you know, slugging it out there in Capricorn, in Aries, blasting Pluto on the 9th. Then we've got Sun square Jupiter on the 11th of October, Sun square Pluto 15th of October, Sun square Saturn 18th of October, Mars square Jupiter 19th. So we've got really the build up to the presidential election is really very much, I've kind of said for a while, I don't see room for a woman in this upcoming presidential election because I think it is going to be so hard fought, it's going to be so bitterly contested that I think a lot, we saw it in the UK, didn't we, just recently, with women withdrawing from politics because they do not want that pressure. They do not want to have the death threats and the Twitter, you know, abuse, and it's becoming extremely cutthroat. And this is one of the things we've definitely witnessed throughout that whole phase of Pluto in Capricorn. What it's done, it's really exposed the vulnerability of our democracy in a way. It's shown what we found many times when we look back through history, you know, previous Saturn-Pluto conjunctions. What they often do is they show you that civilization, thinking Freud, civilization and its discontents too, is very much a veneer. It's very much a surface thing. And it doesn't take much, you know, to let loose the hounds of hell, if you like, and to create madness and mayhem. And if the stakes are high enough, there's always going to be people who are quite happy to release the hounds of hell. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that build up in October there is pretty phenomenal. Then we get through November. You know, if we get through November, we have a, let me see, we have our final Jupiter-Pluto conjunction just a few days after the election. It's in Capricorn, which is a very conservative sign. It's very much about the tried and trusted. It's also very much about the economy. And we can say what, you know, Westerners, whatever, we can say what we like about Trump. But he has delivered a lot of the things he said he would deliver. And as I understand it, the economy in the US is doing pretty good at the moment. So yeah, we'll see. But that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction there, I find Jupiter as well as an important planet for the US. It's the ruler of the ascendant. It also has Pluto in Capricorn in the second house. So this election, I think, is going to be a lot about trade and about the economy for the US. Right, so let's have a look. We're almost through the year. Jumping straight into December now. We've got a solar eclipse on the 14th in 23 degrees 8 Sag. Venus is sextile Jupiter. And then on the 17th of December, we get the final ingress of Saturn into Aquarius. So just like we could say that for the US, I think as well, in 2020, so the writing was on the wall, certain things are clear with regard to what direction the nation is taking. And we come into then on the 21st of December, the solstice and the equinoxes are featuring a lot this year around the time of significant shifts, which is, this is the axis of the world, right? These cardinal points, very important. We see around the spring equinox, we have Saturn just moving into Aquarius. Around the June, the summer solstice, we have Mars moving into Aries just around that time. Then, as I say, at the December, the Christmas, December solstice, we have really the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So I kind of feel a bit light when I say that. I think for many of us, as 2020